It was the first morning that Jason realized living with an alien roommate would be nothing like he had imagined. He had expected some awkwardness, sure, maybe confusion over the way humans did things. But he hadn't expected so many questions about breakfast cereal. The small apartment they shared was neat, though not perfectly organized. Jason had always kept things simple. A bed, a desk with his computer, a few shelves filled with books, and a small table by the window where he sometimes ate. But today the room felt alive in a way it never had before. He could hear soft humming coming from the kitchen. He peeked in and saw her. Lyra. She was his roommate and undeniably not human. Her skin had a subtle shimmer under the morning light, a soft glow that made her appear almost ethereal. Her eyes were a vibrant green, larger than a human's, and they reflected curiosity in a way that made Jason feel like she was trying to read his mind. She was holding a box of cereal upside down, inspecting it with a puzzled frown. "Jason," she said, tilting her head, "explain this. Why do humans pour dry flakes into liquid before eating them?" Jason chuckled. "Because that's how we eat cereal. It's normal." "Normal," Lyra echoed, raising one elegant eyebrow. "This is normal. You place grains in liquid, yet they retain shape, taste different, and you call this breakfast?" Jason smiled, walking closer. "Yes, breakfast." Lyra's lips, a soft shade of violet, pursed in concentration. She poured the cereal into a bowl, then paused. "And this milk, it comes from another animal? Humans consume it willingly?" Jason nodded. "Yeah, from cows mostly. It's tasty." "You've got to try it." Lyra's eyes widened. "Tasty, because it is liquid extracted from another being's body. Fascinating." She sniffed it cautiously, then dipped a finger to taste. Her expression shifted quickly from curiosity to something between surprise and delight. "It works." Sweet and smooth. "Humans are peculiar creatures," Jason laughed again. "Welcome to the human experience." After breakfast, Lyra wandered around the apartment, touching objects carefully as if they might disappear if she moved too quickly. She picked up a clock, turning it over in her hands. Timekeeping. Humans segment existence into artificial periods. Curious. Jason leaned against the doorframe, watching her. Every move she made was careful and precise, but there was also a sense of wonder. "You know, humans don't always understand their own systems either," he said. Lyra tilted her head again. "Then perhaps you are all in the same condition, simultaneously following and questioning arbitrary rules." Jason smirked. "Exactly. And somehow it works, most of the time." By noon, Jason decided it was time to take her out into the city. He wanted her to experience more of human culture beyond cereal and clocks. Lyra followed, her steps careful yet quick, as if she was learning to adapt with every stride. People on the street stared, though some discreetly. Lyra's appearance was unusual, not threatening, but undeniably alien. Yet she didn't seem to care. Her eyes darted everywhere, absorbing the sights and sounds with intense focus. They stopped by a food stall. Jason ordered a hot dog, holding it up. "You should try one of these. It's very human." Lyra examined it like a specimen under a microscope. "This is a cooked tube of meat. Inside bread. Humans consume such things freely. Extraordinary." She took a small bite, chewed carefully, then nodded slowly. "I understand. This is enjoyable." Jason grinned. "See? You're already blending in." Lyra's head tilted again, and for a moment Jason thought she looked almost thoughtful. "Blend in." "Yes, adaptation. You humans have perfected rituals to simplify social interaction. Your foods, gestures, your forms of greeting, all tools for survival, yet they seem celebratory, oddly poetic." Jason laughed, feeling a little proud that he could explain humanity so simply. "Yeah, poetic, that's a good word for it." Their next stop was the local park. Children ran around, their laughter ringing out across the green lawns. Dogs chased balls with tireless energy. Lyra's gaze followed every movement, her eyes sparkling. So humans form bonds with creatures other than their own kind. Fascinating. "You are very social," Jason nodded. "Yeah, we like company. It makes life more bearable, I guess." Lyra crouched near a child playing with a small dog. She extended a hand slowly. "Permission to interact?" The child looked up, startled at first, then smiled and nodded. Lyra's touch was gentle, almost reverent. The dog wagged its tail, responding immediately. Lyra's smile widened, and Jason could see a softness in her expression he hadn't noticed before. "You see," he said. "Humans are strange, but we make it work." Lyra stood up, brushing the grass from her clothes. I am beginning to understand. But there is much to observe. So many patterns, customs, emotions. They are all layered complex, Jason laughed. Yep, you just scratched the surface. By late afternoon, they wandered into a local library. Lyra's eyes lit up at the sight of books. Tell me, these are repositories of knowledge? Jason nodded. Exactly. Humans record everything from facts to stories. Want to see one? Lyra floated a book from the shelf carefully, holding it as though it were fragile. Stories. Imaginary recreations of experience? Jason smiled. Yes, sometimes they teach lessons, sometimes they entertain, sometimes they just exist to remind us that humans feel. Lyra flipped through pages with deliberate care. This is intriguing. Human emotion captured and stored for later reference. You are remarkably sentimental, Jason laughed.
Sentimental.
Sometimes too much. But it's who we are. They spent hours reading, talking, and sharing observations. Lyra was fascinated by how humans express themselves in art, music, and writing. Jason realized that teaching her about culture wasn't just a one-way street. She was also teaching him about patience, observation, and the beauty of seeing familiar things through new eyes. As evening fell, they returned to their apartment. Lyra moved carefully around the kitchen again, inspecting every corner. She opened the fridge slowly, peering inside. Food storage. You humans are remarkably organized. You maintain freshness through temperature manipulation and separation. Ingenious. Jason leaned on the counter, smiling. I guess that's one of the perks of being human. We like efficiency, when we can manage it. Lyra paused, then looked at him seriously. Jason, I wish to understand more. Not just customs, but interactions, connections, emotional patterns. Humans are complicated creatures, Jason nodded. Yeah, we are. But I think you're getting it. You're learning fast. Lyra's eyes shimmered in the soft light. I do not wish to fail in this learning. To fully grasp human ways. To adapt. It is important to me. Jason smiled, feeling a sense of pride and responsibility. You're doing great. And remember, part of being human is making mistakes, then laughing at them. Lyra tilted her head, considering this. Laughing at mistakes. I shall attempt to experience this concept fully. That night after dinner, they sat in the living room. Lyra had arranged several books around her, a notebook open on her lap. She was trying to record her observations, everything from breakfast habits to social etiquette. Jason watched her carefully, noticing the care and dedication in every stroke of her writing. You know, you're really committed, Jason said. Most humans don't even try this hard to understand each other. Lyra looked up, her gaze steady, because understanding requires effort. Humans, it seems, often act without full comprehension. I wish to surpass that limitation. Jason nodded thoughtfully. Ambitious. I like that. They spent the rest of the evening talking quietly. Lyra asked questions, some simple, some surprisingly deep. What was the purpose of friendship? Why did humans celebrate birthdays? How did humans form attachments to things rather than beings? Jason answered as best as he could, often laughing at her innocent misunderstandings, sometimes pausing to think before giving an honest answer. By the time they both finally went to bed, Jason realized something. This wasn't just about Lyra learning human culture. It was about connection. She was discovering humanity, yes, but he was discovering an alien perspective on the same world he had taken for granted. And somehow, he felt a little more human for it. The first day of living together had been strange, confusing, and utterly delightful. Jason knew there would be challenges, misunderstandings, cultural mistakes, and perhaps even arguments. But he also knew something else. With Lyra, life would never be boring, and as he drifted off to sleep, he felt a small spark of excitement for what tomorrow would bring. Because living with an alien roommate wasn't just about sharing space. It was about sharing experiences, learning from each other, and seeing the universe, even their tiny apartment, in a completely new way. The next morning, Jason woke to the smell of something unfamiliar but surprisingly appetizing. He rubbed his eyes and noticed Lyra bustling around the kitchen with an intensity he hadn't seen before. I am attempting pancakes today, she said, almost like she was announcing a scientific experiment. Her hands moved precisely, measuring ingredients, cracking eggs, and mixing flour. Humans often consume sweet fried foods in the morning. I wish to emulate this practice accurately. Jason got out of bed, yawning. You don't have to go that far. I can make breakfast if you want. Lyra paused and tilted her head, her eyes scanning him as if evaluating a data point. No, observation requires participation. I must learn by doing. Only then can understanding be complete, Jason chuckled.
Fair enough.
You're really serious about this human thing, huh? She nodded, eyes bright. I wish to integrate, Jason. Complete comprehension is essential for coexistence. As they worked together, Jason realized that teaching Lyra was as much about patience as it was about information. She asked questions about everything. Why they used forks instead of chopsticks. Why milk was sometimes cold and sometimes hot. And even why humans enjoyed syrup on pancakes. Sweet liquid poured on fried dough, she said slowly, tasting a drop. I see, it is enjoyable. But excessive sweetness may impair judgment. Jason laughed, shaking his head. You're overthinking it, Lyra's expression was serious. Perhaps. But humans are also peculiar. You judge taste subjectively, yet follow societal norms. This must be recorded. By mid-morning, pancakes stacked high on plates, they carried their breakfast to the small table by the window. Outside, the city was waking up. People rushing to work, students hurrying to school, and vendors arranging their stalls. Lyra stared, absorbing every detail. Jason, these movements. Humans appear efficient yet chaotic. What is your method? Jason shrugged. We usually don't have one. We just move, Lyra frowned. Illogical. Yet somehow the system functions. Intriguing. She took a careful bite of her pancake, chewing thoughtfully. I find humans are unpredictable yet patterned. There is elegance in your chaos, Jason grinned. Elegance in chaos. That's a pretty good way to describe it. After breakfast, they decided to visit Jason's high school. Lyra had insisted on observing human teenagers in their natural environment. Jason had warned her it might be overwhelming. You'll see humans at their most. Confusing, he said. Lyra's eyes sparkled. Perfect. Confusion is a fertile ground for learning. At the entrance of the school, Lyra paused, scanning the building. She noticed the lockers, the bulletin boards, and even the security camera above the main door. Structural design. Efficient. Social hubs clearly defined. Humans optimize interaction within defined parameters. Jason laughed. You analyze everything, don't you? Lyra tilted her head. Analysis is key to understanding. Emotional and social components require precise observation. Inside, the hallways were crowded. Students jostled each other, some chatting, others absorbed in their phones. Lyra's large green eyes darted from one person to another, taking in gestures, facial expressions, and body language. Jason, she said quietly, your species communicates more through subtle movements than through speech. Fascinating. Jason nodded. Yeah, tone, gestures, even posture. They all mean something. You're catching on fast. They attended a few classes. Lyra sat quietly at the back, notebook in hand, meticulously writing observations. She asked occasional questions, sometimes out loud, sometimes whispering to Jason. Why do humans memorize facts for tests? She asked during biology. Information is accessible through devices. Why burden the mind? Jason shrugged. Sometimes remembering things helps us think faster. And teachers like to check if we're paying attention. Lyra wrote this down, nodding seriously. Efficiency versus ritual. Humans are contradictory. During lunch, Jason introduced her to some of his friends. They were initially shocked by Lyra's appearance, but quickly warmed to her curiosity and humor. Hi, I'm Lyra, she said, extending her hand politely. I am learning human social interactions. Please assist me in understanding your norms. Jason's friends laughed nervously. Sure, we'll help. Lyra studied them carefully, observing how they ate, how they spoke, and how they reacted to jokes. When someone told a pun, she paused, then laughed in a soft, musical tone. I see. Humor is a tool for bonding. Effective. By mid-afternoon, Lyra and Jason left school and walked through a busy market. Vendors shouted, selling fruits, gadgets, clothes, and all sorts of things. Lyra's eyes widened. Jason, humans display a combination of resourcefulness and deception. Negotiation is a curious ritual. Observe these exchanges. Jason smiled. You'll get the hang of it soon. Lyra picked up an apple, inspecting its color and texture. Decision-making process. Subjective based on sensory input. Interesting. A vendor noticed her hesitation. Hey, you like it? You want it? Lyra turned to Jason, whispering, "How do humans decide in such situations?" Jason whispered back, "Smile, nod, maybe say a price. Don't overthink it." Lyra turned to the vendor. "This fruit is satisfactory. What is the value you assign to it?" The vendor blinked, then laughed. $20. That's the price. Lyra considered this for a moment. Agreed. She handed over the money, then whispered to Jason, "Negotiation. Minimally effective. But social acceptance is more valuable than reduction in cost." Jason laughed. Exactly. Humans care more about being polite than being clever sometimes. That evening, back in their apartment, Lyra tried to process the day. She was writing, drawing diagrams, and even attempting to recreate human gestures she had observed. Jason watched her from the doorway, amused and slightly impressed. "You're really dedicated," he said. Lyra looked up. "Dedication is essential. Observation without application is meaningless." "I must not fail," Jason nodded. "You're not failing. You're learning. And trust me, humans will respect your effort." Lyra paused, her expression thoughtful. "Effort, I understand. But there is another layer I seek: emotional engagement. Humans form bonds not just through interaction, but through shared experiences. I wish to experience this fully." "With you, Jason." Jason blinked. "With me?" "Yes," she said simply. "You are my closest human contact. I wish to understand companionship as you experience it." Jason felt a strange warmth in his chest. It wasn't romantic, not exactly. It was connection, the kind that made him feel responsible, protective, and genuinely happy. "Well, I guess we'll have to create some experiences then." Lyra smiled. "Agreed, but they must be authentic. No simulations. Real human engagement." Over the next few days, they experimented with human activities. Cooking together, exploring the city, watching movies, even trying video games. Each experience was a lesson, a chance for Lyra to understand human emotions, reactions, and culture. One evening, they sat on the roof of their apartment building looking at the stars. Lyra's eyes glimmered with wonder. "Jason, humans are complex yet fragile. You cling to rituals, to patterns, yet chaos persists. And still you survive, thrive, and form connections." Jason leaned back, staring at the sky. "Yeah, we do. It's messy, but it works." Lyra turned to him, her gaze steady. "I wish to understand not just the behaviors, Jason, but the emotions behind them. The feelings that drive choices, relationships, love, trust, fear, joy." Jason smiled faintly. "Then you're in for a long journey." She tilted her head, her expression curious. "I do not fear difficulty. I seek comprehension. I wish to be part of your world, Jason." And at that moment, Jason realized something profound. Lyra wasn't just learning human culture. She was learning humanity itself. And he in turn was learning how extraordinary it was to see his world through alien eyes. The sun set, painting the sky with shades of orange and purple. They sat quietly, sharing this simple human moment. Neither spoke for a long while. But in the silence, there was understanding, connection, and trust. Tomorrow, Jason knew, they would face more challenges, misunderstandings, social experiments, and perhaps moments of awkwardness. But with Lyra, life was an adventure, a discovery, and a lesson in humanity itself. Because understanding each other wasn't just about observing actions. It was about sharing experiences, questioning assumptions, and finding joy in the simplest moments. And Jason knew that with Lyra by his side, he was only beginning to scratch the surface of what it meant to truly connect. The weekend arrived, and with it came a different rhythm. Jason had been used to predictable school days, homework, and the occasional hangout with friends, but now the apartment felt alive with possibility. Lyra had been planning something, though Jason had no idea what. "I am curious," Lyra said that morning, her green eyes sparkling. "Humans often engage in recreational gatherings called parties. I wish to experience one firsthand." "You will assist me, yes?" Jason laughed, nearly spilling his cereal. "You want to go to a party? You've barely gotten used to human food in school." "Are you sure?" Lyra nodded with absolute certainty. "Understanding cultural bonding requires observation in natural social environments. Parties are suitable." Reluctantly, Jason agreed. He had invited a few friends over to a small gathering at his apartment. Nothing big, just music, snacks, and laughter. But to Lyra, it was a field study of the highest importance. When the guests arrived, Lyra stood near the doorway, carefully observing every person as they entered. She noticed hairstyles, clothes, gestures, and even the way people smiled. Interesting. Humans display hierarchy subtly. Confidence and appearance dominate initial perception. Jason tried not to laugh as Lyra scribbled notes in her notebook, muttering under her breath. Hierarchy, interaction, initiation patterns. One of Jason's friends, Maya, noticed her curiosity. Hey, you new here? She asked, smiling warmly. Yes, Lyra replied politely. I am learning human social protocols. Your cooperation is requested. Maya raised an eyebrow but smiled. Okay, I think we can manage that. As the evening progressed, Lyra tried to participate. She observed group conversations, noting who led discussions and who followed. She mimicked gestures she had seen, like laughing at jokes, nodding politely, and even attempting casual small talk. Jason watched from across the room. Her attempts were a little awkward but charming. Somehow she made everyone smile, not because she was perfect, but because she was genuinely curious and earnest. At one point, someone offered Lyra a drink. She examined the colorful liquid carefully. Explain. Humans consume fluids of various colors for social acceptance? Jason shook his head, smiling. It's just juice or soda. You can try it. Lyra took a sip and blinked. Sweet, carbonated. It causes stimulation in sensory reception. Pleasant. She nodded, then returned her focus to the conversation around her, attempting to engage. Despite her awkwardness, the group welcomed her. They were fascinated by her intelligence, her observations, and the odd way she saw ordinary human behavior as extraordinary. Her questions were sometimes blunt, sometimes hilarious, but always insightful. After the party, when the last guest had left, Jason and Lyra sat on the couch, exhausted but happy. You did well tonight, Jason said. Most humans wouldn't handle a crowd that carefully and still stay themselves. Lyra tilted her head. I am learning. Observation must be combined with action. Humans display value in spontaneity, yet my calculations demand balance. I attempt this, Jason chuckled. You're learning fast. But remember, humans also value imperfection. We laugh at mistakes. Sometimes that's the best part. Lyra considered this, laughing at errors, a method of emotional bonding. I will attempt this. Perhaps it is enjoyable. The next morning, Jason woke to a strange sound. Lyra was humming while holding a video game controller, staring intently at the screen. I am learning interactive human recreation, she explained. This activity involves coordination, strategy, and reflex. Humans enjoy challenges, it seems. Jason sat down beside her, shaking his head in amusement. You're really covering all aspects, huh? Lyra nodded, completely focused. Integration requires immersion. I must not fail in understanding these systems. It is essential. The game was chaotic, with Lyra initially struggling to understand the controls. But with Jason's guidance, she began improving. Soon she was laughing, a soft musical sound when mistakes occurred. Jason, she exclaimed, hitting the wrong button and sending her character flying off a cliff. I failed. Jason laughed, high-fiving her. That's perfect. Humans celebrate these failures sometimes. Makes it more fun. Lyra paused, then smiled. Indeed, celebration of failure. I comprehend. Unexpected, yet pleasurable. Later, they went out to a nearby arcade. Lyra's fascination with human activities was evident everywhere. She played basketball hoops, raced cars, and tried claw machines, recording notes in her notebook between games. Jason couldn't help but notice how Lyra's curiosity wasn't just intellectual. She was learning to enjoy life in a human way. The excitement of competition, the laughter in losing, and the small triumphs in winning. When the arcade closed, Jason and Lyra walked through the city streets. The neon lights reflected in her shimmering skin, making her look like a living constellation. Jason, she said softly, humans experience emotion through shared victories and losses. It is enlightening, connection through experience rather than data. Jason smiled. Yeah, that's what makes life interesting. Humans bond through fun, challenges, and sometimes chaos. Lyra nodded thoughtfully. I must document this. Emotional resonance. Enjoyment in unpredictability? It is. A critical observation. The following week, Lyra had another idea. She wanted to see how humans behaved in nature. Jason reluctantly agreed to take her on a hike to a nearby forest reserve. The change from urban chaos to natural calm fascinated Lyra. She marveled at the trees, the birds, and the sound of a stream flowing nearby. Humans exist in nature, she said, yet many ignore its patterns. Observation of natural systems reveals simplicity and elegance lacking in urban complexity. Jason smiled. Some humans appreciate nature, some not so much, but you're noticing it well. As they walked, Lyra attempted to imitate the sounds of birds, cautiously stepping over roots and even helping Jason identify animal tracks. Her enthusiasm was infectious. Jason realized that she didn't just want to learn human behavior. She wanted to experience it fully. By afternoon, they reached a clearing and sat down by a small lake. Lyra picked up a stone and skipped it across the water. Humans find satisfaction in simple physical manipulation of objects. Repetition with variation induces calm and pleasure, Jason laughed. Yeah, sometimes it's just about throwing rocks and seeing them bounce. Lyra watched as the stone danced across the water. I understand the attraction. Simplicity can be a form of complexity when the observer is engaged. Humans are efficient in joy. As they rested, Jason told her stories about his childhood, about friends, small misadventures, and lessons learned. Lyra listened intently, her eyes reflecting the sunlight. Humans learn from narrative, she said softly. Emotion, memory, and pattern intertwined. Remarkable. Jason realized that sharing stories was as much about connection as it was about information, and Lyra seemed to understand that on a level deeper than anything he had taught her. Returning home, they were tired but exhilarated. Lyra immediately began recording observations in her notebook, sketches of trees, descriptions of sounds, and reflections on human behavior in natural environments. Jason watched her, thinking about how much she had grown in understanding the human world. She had started as an observer, curious and cautious, and now she was participating, laughing, and learning to enjoy the unpredictability of life. Before bed, Lyra looked out the window at the city lights. Jason, she said quietly, humans are messy, chaotic, illogical, and yet you create systems, rituals, and bonds. You survive. You thrive. You laugh. I wish to continue learning not just for observation, but for understanding the essence of humanity. Jason nodded. And you will. Every day you're getting closer. You're already part of it, part of our world. Lyra tilted her head thoughtfully. I do not wish to remain merely an observer. I wish to integrate fully emotionally and socially, to experience humanity as it is, in all its contradictions. Jason smiled, feeling a deep sense of connection. Then we'll keep going, step by step. You're doing great, Lyra. Lyra's eyes shimmered. Thank you, Jason. Guidance from a human is invaluable. And so, as night fell over the city, both of them rested, one learning the complexity of human life, the other learning how to teach and guide without imposing. The partnership they had formed was evolving, from curiosity to camaraderie, from observation to shared experience. Tomorrow, Jason knew, they would face new challenges, misunderstandings with friends, school assignments, and perhaps even moments that would test their patience. But with Lyra, each day was a discovery, each experience a lesson, and each interaction a chance to understand what it truly meant to be human. Because learning humanity wasn't just about observing rules or imitating behavior. It was about connection, empathy, and finding joy in the shared unpredictability of life. And Jason realized that with Lyra by his side, every day would be an adventure, a story worth living, and a chance to see his world in a whole new light. Monday morning arrived with the usual rush of students flooding the hallways. Jason trudged to school, Lyra trailing slightly behind him, notebook clutched in her hands. She moved with a grace that made her almost invisible in the crowd, yet her presence drew subtle attention. Her shimmering skin, slightly different posture, and keen green eyes made her stand out, though somehow she managed it without seeming disruptive. Jason, Lyra whispered as they entered their classroom, today we must observe peer interactions under high-stress conditions. Social patterns during educational assessment are complex, Jason chuckled. You mean tests? Yeah, humans can be a little tense about them. Lyra tilted her head. Tense. Physiological responses indicate anxiety. Emotional spikes occur. Observation is critical. They sat together, notebooks open as the teacher handed out the tests. Lyra's hands moved carefully, her pencil tracing numbers and letters as if she were decoding an alien language. Jason noticed she paused several times, not because she didn't understand the questions, but because she was analyzing the expressions of other students, the tapping of pencils, and the way some whispered to each other. During the break, Lyra approached a group of classmates. "May I inquire, why do you display signs of stress during cognitive evaluation?" One student, bewildered, blinked. Because we're worried about grades?" Lyra nodded slowly. "I see. You are concerned about external validation." "Fascinating." Jason, watching from his desk, grinned. "You're really getting into this human thing, huh?" Lyra glanced at him. "Understanding humans requires integration into their emotional systems. Observation alone is insufficient." Later in the day, they went to the cafeteria for lunch. Lyra's fascination with human food continued unabated. She observed trays, noticed who sat with whom, and even noted the subtleties of conversation. Laughter, teasing, and silent exchanges. Jason's friends noticed her attentiveness. "She's different," one of them muttered. "Yes, but interesting," another replied. "She asks questions we never even thought about." Lyra leaned into Jason quietly. Humans form bonds through shared consumption of nutrients. Communication is enhanced during this activity. "Observation effective," Jason nodded. "Yeah, lunch is more than just eating. It's social." After school, they decided to take a walk through a quieter part of the city. Lyra was eager to observe more: architecture, pedestrian behavior, and even how small businesses interacted with customers. "Jason," she said, pointing to a street performer playing a violin, "humans create art for emotional impact. The audience responds with appreciation. This is a form of communication beyond words." Jason watched as the crowd gathered, some tossing coins into a small box. Lyra crouched slightly to watch the exchange. Tokens of appreciation. Humans quantify emotional reward with objects. "Ingenious," Jason smiled. "You're really noticing everything." Lyra nodded. "Observation and participation are key. Human culture thrives on shared experiences, and I intend to understand fully." The next day, an unexpected situation arose at school. During a history class, one of Jason's classmates made a sarcastic comment about Lyra's appearance. It wasn't mean-spirited, but it was enough to catch her attention. Lyra's green eyes narrowed slightly. "Jason, this individual challenges my social integration." "Response is required." Jason quickly approached her. "Ignore it. It wasn't meant to hurt you." But Lyra shook her head. "Observation requires action. Humans must understand boundaries." She approached the student calmly. "I am integrating into your culture. I do not wish to disrupt, yet respect is necessary. Your words may not align with cooperation." The student blinked, surprised by her composure and unusual phrasing. I didn't mean..." Lyra simply inclined her head and returned to Jason. Conflict addressed. Social balance restored. Jason couldn't help but admire her. She had handled it without anger or retaliation, yet she had made her point clear. "You really have a way of handling things," he said quietly. Lyra looked at him. "Observation is meaningless without action, but action must be measured, not emotional. Humans often fail at this." Over the next few days, Lyra became more confident in her interactions. She joined clubs, participated in group projects, and even helped organize a small charity drive at school. Jason noticed how she began to influence others positively, not through dominance or authority, but through curiosity, intelligence, and genuine care. One afternoon, as they walked home, Lyra paused near a playground where children were playing. "Jason, humans exhibit complex emotional structures even at early stages. Play is a method of learning social rules, negotiation, and conflict resolution. Observation, invaluable." Jason smiled, watching a small boy share his toy with a girl. "Yeah, play teaches them more than just games. It's about fairness, trust, and sometimes patience." Lyra nodded thoughtfully. "Patience. Humans must learn restraint to coexist. Emotional management begins early." Fascinating. At home, Lyra attempted to recreate some of the games with Jason, though her alien physiology made it slightly awkward. Still, she laughed, and a soft musical sound on every time she stumbled. Jason found himself laughing too, realizing that the simple act of playing together was strengthening their bond more than any lesson or observation could. The following weekend, Jason invited Lyra to a community event. a local festival filled with music, food stalls, games, and performances. Lyra's eyes widened at the sheer variety of human expression. She watched dancers, listened to musicians, and observed people interacting. "Jason," she whispered, "humans express creativity through multiple channels simultaneously. Coordination of senses, emotional stimulation, social bonding. This is intense," Jason nodded.
Yeah, festivals are like
"Celebrations of everything humans enjoy, chaos and order at the same time." Lyra nodded slowly. "Observation. Humans thrive in controlled chaos. Participation enhances connection. I wish to engage fully." Throughout the festival, Lyra tried new foods, attempted traditional dances, and even participated in small competitions. Jason watched her with amusement and pride. She was learning humanity not through theory, but through living it, through laughter, mistakes, and curiosity. By evening, they sat near a small fountain, tired but content. Lyra's notebook was filled with observations, sketches, and reflections. "Jason," she said softly, "humans are remarkable. You navigate complexity with adaptability, emotion with logic, and social bonds with flexibility. I'm learning not just behaviors, but essence." Jason smiled. "Essence. That's a good way to put it. It's messy, but beautiful." Lyra tilted her head. "Beautiful, yes, that is accurate. Integration requires experiencing beauty as humans perceive it. Observation alone is insufficient," Jason laughed. "Looks like you're becoming more human than most humans I know." Lyra's eyes sparkled. "Perhaps, but I do not wish to imitate merely. I wish to understand, comprehend, experience humanity in its entirety, joy, sorrow, play, and work." Jason leaned back, watching the stars beginning to appear above the city. He realized that Lyra had already changed the way he saw his own world. Through her eyes, even ordinary streets, parks, and classrooms seemed full of wonder, and he understood something else. This journey was no longer just about teaching her. It was about learning together, discovering the human experience anew, and sharing moments that neither would ever forget. Lyra scribbled one final note in her notebook before closing it. "Jason, companionship, shared experience, emotional exchange. These are the pillars of human connection. Observation has transformed into participation. Tomorrow I shall continue deeper exploration." Jason nodded. "And I'll be right there with you, every step of the way." As they returned to the apartment, the city lights reflecting off their path, Jason realized something important. Humanity was more than just rules, habits, and behaviors. It was about connection, understanding, laughter, mistakes, and growth. And Lyra, with her alien perspective, insatiable curiosity, and earnest heart, was teaching him how extraordinary even the simplest human moments could be. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new adventures, and new discoveries. But for tonight, Jason and Lyra had shared something that mattered far more than lessons or observations: trust, friendship, and the quiet joy of experiencing life together. Because in the end, learning humanity wasn't just about understanding actions. It was about understanding hearts, forming bonds, and finding meaning in the shared unpredictability of life. The weekend arrived again, but this time it felt different. Jason and Lyra had spent weeks exploring human culture, learning, laughing, and sometimes stumbling together. The bond between them had grown deeper, more nuanced, and more trusting than either had expected. Lyra stood by the window, watching the sun rise over the city skyline. Her notebook rested open on the desk, filled with sketches, observations, and reflections on everything they had done: school, festivals, games, friendships. Today, she said, she wanted to experience something humans called family bonding. Jason raised an eyebrow. "Family bonding? My family isn't exactly traditional, but we can try." Lyra's eyes sparkled. "I wish to comprehend familial interactions, emotional exchanges, and trust reinforcement in natural environments." "Your family, Jason, is ideal for observation and participation." Jason laughed softly. "All right, but don't be surprised if it's messy." By mid-morning, they arrived at Jason's home. His parents were surprised but curious to meet Lyra. She greeted them politely, bowing slightly in her unique way. "I am Lyra," she said. "I am learning human customs. Your cooperation is appreciated," Jason's mother smiled. "Well, Lyra, you're very polite. We'll help however we can." Throughout the day, Lyra observed everything. the way Jason's parents interacted with each other, how they spoke to Jason, and how small gestures, like a smile or a hand on the shoulder, conveyed care. She noted their laughter, their teasing, and even their gentle disagreements. Humans communicate affection subtly, she whispered to Jason. Physical touch and verbal acknowledgement are primary indicators. Observation invaluable, Jason nodded. Yep, family is complicated, but it works. Later, they cooked a meal together. Lyra carefully measured ingredients, followed instructions, and even improvised slightly, adding a pinch of something she thought might taste good. Jason's mother watched in amusement. She's fascinating, she whispered to Jason. So serious about learning, yet she has a kind heart. Lyra observed their reactions to taste and flavor, taking meticulous notes. She tried to replicate human expressions of delight. When Jason's father complimented her efforts, she paused, processing the information. Recognition, emotional reinforcement, effective for motivation. Understood. After dinner, they sat in the living room, sharing stories. Lyra listened intently as Jason's parents recounted childhood memories, small misadventures, and lessons learned. She asked questions, not bluntly, but with curiosity and care. Jason, she said softly, humans transmit culture, values, and emotion through narrative. Understanding these stories is critical for integration. Jason smiled, realizing she was beginning to understand more than just behaviors. She was beginning to grasp human emotion. That evening, they returned to their apartment. Lyra seemed deep in thought, her notebook closed but her mind active. Jason, she said quietly, I have observed, participated, and reflected on multiple facets of human life. I comprehend behaviors, social bonds, emotional triggers, and entertainment. But there is an element I still seek to understand fully. Jason tilted his head. And what's that? Lyra's gaze met his, steady and sincere. Trust, full unconditional trust. Humans form connections, but some bonds require complete reliance. I wish to experience this with you. Jason's heart skipped a beat. With me? Yes, she replied. Through shared experiences, risk-taking, and vulnerability, one can achieve comprehension of deep connection. I wish to attempt this. Jason considered her words. All right, but that's serious. Trust like that isn't given lightly. Lyra nodded. I understand, but I am willing. You have guided me through observation, participation, and emotional learning. I wish to advance to experiential trust. The next day, Jason suggested an activity that would challenge both of them. A climbing trip to a nearby mountain range. It was physically demanding, required coordination, and involved reliance on each other for safety. As they ascended, Lyra's eyes scanned the terrain, analyzing every rock, tree root, and slope. Jason occasionally offered guidance, showing her where to place hands and feet. Lyra followed carefully, trusting his instructions. Halfway up, the trail became steeper. Jason noticed Lyra hesitating at a particularly challenging section. Jason, I require assistance, she admitted. He reached out. Take my hand. I'll guide you. She grasped his hand, and together they navigated the difficult path. For Lyra, it was a profound lesson, trusting another, relying on someone's judgment, and embracing vulnerability. At the summit, they paused, breathing heavily, but feeling triumphant. The city sprawled below them, the horizon stretching endlessly. Jason, Lyra said softly, this experience embodies trust, cooperation, and shared triumph. Emotional resonance is strong. I understand more than observation can convey. Jason smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest. You're learning fast. And I've learned a lot, too, about patience, understanding, and seeing the world differently through your eyes. They spent the afternoon at the summit, sharing stories, laughter, and quiet moments of reflection. Lyra watched the sun begin to set, the sky painting shades of orange, purple, and pink. Jason, she said quietly, humans experience beauty not only in outcomes but in processes, in effort, shared experience, and perception. Today I have learned more than in weeks of observation. Jason nodded. Sometimes the lessons you can't write down are the most important. As they descended, Lyra continued to observe the interplay between risk, cooperation, and emotional trust. Every step required reliance on Jason and, in turn, confidence in her own abilities. It was a lesson she would never forget. Back at the apartment, they reviewed the day's experiences in her notebook. Lyra's notes were detailed, combining analytical precision with newfound understanding of emotional depth. "Jason," she said, closing the notebook, "I have completed multiple levels of human integration: intellectual, social, recreational, and emotional. But the pinnacle is trust and connection. Today I believe I have achieved this." Jason smiled, feeling proud and touched. "You've come a long way, Lyra. More than I ever expected." Lyra turned to him, her eyes reflecting sincerity. "And you, Jason, have guided me. Your patience, kindness, and willingness to share your world has allowed me to evolve from observer to participant, from learner to companion." Jason's heart swelled. He realized that in teaching her he had also learned about patience, empathy, and the beauty of connection. Lyra had become more than a roommate or a student of humanity. She was a friend, a partner in discovery, and a reflection of the extraordinary potential in human-alien collaboration. Over the next few days, they reflected on their journey. Lyra reviewed her notebook, summarizing lessons in observation, participation, emotional comprehension, and trust. Jason shared feedback, laughing at some of her early misunderstandings and marveling at her growth. One evening, as they sat by the window watching the stars, Lyra spoke softly. "Jason, my journey into human culture has revealed complexity, beauty, and connection. Yet the most profound lesson is this: humans are capable of empathy, trust, and adaptation beyond expectation. I am grateful for your guidance." Jason smiled, reaching out to touch her hand lightly. "I'm grateful too, Lyra. You've changed how I see my own world. And I think we've both learned what it really means to connect." Lyra nodded, her eyes shimmering. "Connection, shared experience, trusting, understanding. These are the pillars of humanity. I have integrated these lessons fully. But I also recognize that growth is continuous. Tomorrow and the days after will offer new challenges and discoveries. And I shall meet them, Jason, with you by my side." Jason squeezed her hand gently. "I wouldn't have it any other way." As the night deepened, the city lights twinkling below, both of them sat quietly, reflecting on the journey that had started weeks ago. A journey of curiosity, learning, and laughter had transformed into one of trust, understanding, and companionship. Lyra finally spoke again, her voice soft but firm. "Jason, humans possess a capacity for resilience, adaptability, and connection that is extraordinary. Observing was merely the beginning. Experiencing, participating, and trusting. That is where true comprehension lies. Thank you for allowing me to understand fully." Jason smiled, feeling the weight of her words. "No, thank you, Lyra, for reminding me what it means to see life through fresh eyes, for teaching me patience, joy, and the importance of shared experiences, for being you." Lyra's eyes glimmered, a mix of alien curiosity and human emotion. "Then our journey continues, Jason. Together, exploring, learning, and connecting. Humanity is not merely observed, but lived. And I intend to live it fully." Jason nodded. "Together." And so, as the stars spread across the night sky, two beings, human and alien, sat side by side, companions in discovery, bonded by laughter, trust, and shared experience. The adventure that began with curiosity had grown into something far greater, a true understanding of connection, compassion, and what it truly meant to be alive. For Lyra, it was the culmination of observation, participation, and emotional integration. For Jason, it was the discovery of how extraordinary life could be when seen through someone else's eyes. And for both of them, it was only the beginning of countless new adventures, challenges, and moments of profound understanding.